Who was responsible for Taiwan's defense?
Part 64. Comparisons, Taiwan and Alsace-Lorraine.
Alsace-Lorraine is a region on the eastern border of modern-day France, lying south of Belgium and Luxembourg, and north of Switzerland. Since the mid-1600s, this region's sovereign status has changed many times, being ceded back and forth between Germany and France. Historical background.
Historically, this region was at the center of Charlemagne's Frankish Empire in the 9th century, and later became part of the Germanies, of the Holy Roman Empire. Alsace-Lorraine remained a German territory under various sovereignties for approximately 800 years until the end of the 30 Years' War, 1618 to 1648, which was fought primarily in Central Europe.
Since the mid-1600s, this region has been ceded back and forth between Germany and France numerous times. As such, it may be an excellent reference for a discussion of the significance of the events of late October 1945 in Taiwan, and whether those events can be interpreted as a restoration of Chinese sovereignty over Taiwan.
The following charts, with the yellow-green background, list the relevant treaties of later years, their entry into force, and the articles stipulating the cession of the territory.
Commentary. According to the Peace of Westphalia, multiple territorial adjustments were also decided. Among the most important ones was the recognition of the independence of Switzerland from the Holy Roman Empire and the expansion of the territories of France, Sweden, and some other areas. The independence of the city of Bremen was clarified.
The Peace of Westphalia established the precedent of 1. Peace, that is, the ending of war, being reached by diplomatic congresses, and 2. A new system of political order in Europe, based upon the concept of coexisting sovereign states.
Commentary. In 1871, after its victory in the Franco-Prussian War, the newly created German Empire's demand for Alsace-Lorraine from France was not simply a punitive measure. Clearly, there was the desire to unify all the German-speaking populations of the former Holy Roman Empire into a single nation-state.
From the modern viewpoint, such actions have distinct overtones of irredentism, which is defined as
claiming a right to territories belonging to another state on the grounds of common ethnicity and/or prior historical possession, actual or alleged.
Importantly, when discussing Taiwan and its relations with China, it should be remembered, however, that irredentism is a doctrine from the sphere of identity politics, cultural and ethnic studies, and political geography, and not a legal doctrine per se.
Commentary. The Treaty of Versailles resulted in the population and territory of Germany being reduced by about 10%. In the west, Alsace and Lorraine were returned to France, and the Saarland was placed under the supervision of the League of Nations until 1935. It later became a French protectorate in December 1947, and joined the Federal Republic of Germany in January 1957.
Poland's new borders were established by the treaty, and the restoration of an independent Polish state was achieved. Poland acquired large areas that were previously part of the German Empire, the Russian Empire, and the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Great Britain, France, Japan, and other allied nations took over all of Germany's overseas colonies in China, in Africa, and in the Greater Pacific area. Alsace-Lorraine in World War II.
This region was occupied by German military troops in World War II.
The German military occupation of Alsace-Lorraine began in 1940. However, there was no internationally recognized transfer of territorial sovereignty, as this was merely de facto control of French territory. The German military occupation of Alsace-Lorraine ended in 1945. German troops evacuated Alsace-Lorraine, and this region was returned to France.
21st century. Current sovereign status. Alsace-Lorraine has been under French sovereignty continuously since 1919, only interrupted by 5 years of military occupation by Germany in World War II.
The territorial sovereignty of Alsace-Lorraine is currently held by France.
Lessons for Taiwan.
Many pro-China scholars maintain that the correct interpretation of the events of late October 1945 in Taiwan is to say that Taiwan was restored to China. Therefore, in their view, no formal peace treaty was necessary, and simple negotiations between the Japanese and Chinese military commanders in Taipei was adequate to effect a transfer of territorial sovereignty.
However, A comparative overview of the historical situations of the transfer of sovereignty over Alsace-Lorraine from an extremely early era to the present shows that such an interpretation is not in accordance with international norms.
Specifically, despite many transfers or changes of sovereignty between Germany and France from the mid-800s through the 20th century, at no time was an international law doctrine of restored sovereignty invoked by either country.
As outlined above, in each instance where there was a transfer of sovereignty, a formal peace treaty was drafted, containing explicit specifications of the rights and responsibilities of all parties involved.
The only possible conclusion is that international law does not have any formal doctrine of restored sovereignty. Each transfer or change of sovereignty is regarded as a completely separate event.
Surrender ceremonies and transfer of sovereignty.
Moreover, it cannot be repeated often enough, the international community does not recognize any transfer of sovereignty at surrender ceremonies.
Additional proof of this assertion, in regard to whether or not there was any transfer of Taiwan's territorial sovereignty on October 25, 1945, may be obtained by examining the content of Article 51 of the 1919 Treaty of Versailles.
Article 51. The territories which were ceded to Germany in accordance with the preliminaries of peace signed at Versailles on February 26, 1871, and the Treaty of Frankfurt of May 10, 1871, are restored to French sovereignty as from the date of the armistice of November 11, 1918.
Accordingly, if indeed there had been any agreement among the Allies that Taiwan was being restored to Chinese sovereignty, as from the date of the Japanese surrender ceremonies of October 25, 1945, then the San Francisco Peace Treaty, SFPT, would certainly have contained a similar article.
However, no such stipulations were included in the SFPT. This is then affirmative proof that there was no Taiwan Retrocession Day, and the date of October 25, 1945, merely marked the beginning of the military occupation of Taiwan.
Consequently, all actions of the ROC regime which are based on the false premise of October 25, 1945, being Taiwan Retrocession Day should be regarded as void ab initio. This Latin phrase means, void from the beginning and without any legal effect.
Afterward.
There is much confusion between the mid-1940s situations of Japanese-governed Taiwan and Japanese-governed Manchukuo. For a full clarification, please see film number 56.